Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Genuine concerns in relation to forestry have been raised in recent weeks in relation to the Irish Strategic Forestry Fund. It is precisely because of those genuine concerns that I am happy to have this opportunity to speak about the upcoming forestry programme, the Forest Strategy and the Irish Strategic Forestry Fund. Government policy is to increase our forest estate from 11.6% to 18% by 2050. If we are to reach this target, we will have to create an additional 450,000 hectares of new forests by 2050. Last November, Government announced funding of €1.3 billion for the new forestry programme, subject to state aid approval. This is both the biggest and most farmer-friendly forestry programme in the history of the state, and it will play a crucial role in meeting our forestry targets under the Climate Action Plan. Under the new forestry programme, farmers will receive 20 years of premium payments compared to 15 years of premium payments for non-farmers. Furthermore, in addition to receiving 33% more premium payments, farmers who want to plant new forests will receive their BIS payment on land converted to forestry, whereas other private landowners will not receive that payment. Under the new programme, the incentives for native broadleaf forests, agroforestry and continuous cover forestry will be significantly increased. And there will also be support for a new forest type, emergent woodland. And a further example of our farmer and biodiversity-friendly approach is that organic farmers will be able to receive organic farming payments and agroforestry premiums on the same plot of land. Roughly 2/3 of the land mass of Ireland is farmland. Therefore, the reality is, if we are to meet our 2050 forestry targets, we will need to count on a massive effort from our farmers. Our farmers will be the primary drivers of our afforestation efforts, and they will be the primary beneficiaries of the €1.3 billion programme. Last April, Coillte announced its strategy vision for 2050. Half of the new forests Coillte will enable by 2050 will be native woodlands. The other half will be forests for quality timber production, which will be used in large part to displace emissions-intensive building materials such as steel and cement. More timber for use in construction is a positive thing. And I want to be absolutely clear that those new forests that are more focused on timber production will not be monoculture forests. The days of state-funded monoculture forests with inappropriate setback distances on the wrong soil types are over. Any forest planted under the new forestry programme for timber production will have a minimum 20% broadleaf content and a minimum 15% area for biodiversity enhancement. Tonight's motion calls for immediate publication of the forest strategy, and we will be doing so in coming weeks. The draft strategy was informed by extensive engagement with the public and with stakeholders, and that draft text went to public consultation last October until the end of November. Our officials are in the final stages of working through the submissions to that public consultation to finalise the strategy for publication. And I think all deputies will agree that this is a critically important step to get right, to ensure that our forest strategy is reflective of the views of the public. This strategy will deliver for climate, for biodiversity, for water quality, for communities and for rural economies. In relation to licensing, let's be clear here. The crisis is over. We've made very substantial investment in licensing resources, particularly in relation to ecology, and forestry licensing output performed excellently throughout 2022, with turnaround time significantly improved. In summary, last year, we issued 4,713 licences, which is 1,154 more licences issued than applications received. The 6,700 licences we had on hand in total in August 2021 is now at just over 3,000, and this continues to reduce every week, even when new applications are factored in. Licences for timber felling and forest roads in 2022 were both at record levels for any single year. And finally, there are now over 1,000 approved afforestation contracts, with 7,343 hectares ready for planting. So it's clear the government is serious about making progress in forestry. And I think it's very clear from Sinn Féin's motion this evening that unfortunately, like many areas of climate action, Sinn Féin is not really at all that serious about forestry. Excuse me. Deputy Carthy wrote today in the Daily Mail that this fund could receive up to £2 billion in subsidies from Irish taxpayers. This is utterly untrue. Deputy Carthy and his party know that this particular deal represents less than 1% of the government's targets for new forestry by 2050. Sinn Féin knows that the vast majority of the €1.3 billion forestry programme will go to farmers. Sinn Féin also knows that government does not interfere in contracts made by commercial semi-states such as Coillte and ISIF, nor should we be moving to a space whereby government ministers or indeed opposition politicians can retrospectively interfere in contracts that semi-states have lawfully entered into. What I will say about this motion, however, is that I do welcome the fact that we are discussing forestry and the role of Coillte more generally here this evening. In the context of Coilte's further direction, I think it's important to mention, first of all, a key constraint on Coilte's ability to engage in afforestation without private involvement, which is EU state aid rules. A 2003 EU state aid decision ruled that Coillte as a public authority could not receive state aid in the form of annual forestry premium payments. Our officials in the Department of Agriculture are assessing the extent to which the state might be able to fund Coilte's afforestation efforts directly, either through capital funding or through grant and premium payments under the new forestry programme, without breaching new state aid guidelines adopted on the 1st of January this year. More broadly, though, I think it is a very timely debate. We are shortly moving to phase 2 of the land use review, and this will look, among other things, at how we can further streamline the forestry licensing process by adopting a plan-based approach. Among the bigger land use questions we have to tackle is the question of what we as a state want from Coillte and where its focus should lie. Coillte, under its existing commercial mandate, has committed to a 50-50 split between forests for nature and forests for wood. And I believe this represents real progress from a place where Coillte had traditionally had an 80-20 split in favour of forests for wood. Certainly my own party was clear in its general election manifesto in 2020 that we should look at a broader mandate for Coillte, which would deliver multiple benefits, including environmental and community objectives, as well as the production of high-quality timber. And this remains our position. I will continue to pursue this with my government colleagues. And I've always wanted a broader mandate for Coillte, and if this debate can bring that forward, it will be a good result. I know the Citizens' Assembly on Biodiversity discussed Coillte over the weekend and made a similar draft recommendation, and I look forward to examining the final recommendations of the Citizens' Assembly when they come to government, and exploring the merits of those recommendations with my coalition colleagues. I understand that the Citizens' Assembly also expressed a concern that the Irish Strategic Forestry Fund should not result in the sale of any existing Coillte forests, and I can categorically say that that is not on the cards. The fund will not seek to purchase any public lands, and any land purchased by the fund, whether it is in existing forest or bare land, will already be in private ownership. Despite Deputy Boyd Barrett again repeating inaccurately that the fund could plant up to 100,000 hectares of new forests, I want to clarify that this fund will plant roughly 3,500 hectares over a 5-year period, meaning an average of about 700 hectares a year. Deputy Boyd Barrett has consistently repeated a figure that is over 28 times the area that will actually be planted by this fund. And this level of misinformation really doesn't serve anyone. As the Taoiseach said earlier today on the floor of this House, the fund is not the government's preferred model to reach its afforestation targets. This is one small model of afforestation, representing less than 1% of our overall target by 2050. The government's preferred model of afforestation is one where farmers plant trees on their land, which is why we have designed the new forestry programme in a way that will pay farmers 33% more in annual premium payments than any other landowner, on top of the basic income support for sustainability payment, which non-farmers again will not receive. That said, Coillte, as our state forester, has an important role to play in contributing to our afforestation targets alongside farmers. There is enormous potential for Coillte to establish new native woodlands for biodiversity on lands already in public ownership and suitable for forestry. Coillte is already working closely with local authorities and state bodies to identify such land. Coillte and Bord na Móna are planting native woodlands on former industrial cutaway peatlands is a great example of this approach. Coillte is also planting new native woodlands through the not-for-profit Nature Trust. And I know that Taoiseach has said we should examine the possibility of the state purchasing land for Coillte to plant further native woodlands. This is something I am absolutely open to, as well as a wider government decision over the coming months around what it is we want from Coillte, to ensure that it delivers for climate, for nature, for water quality, wood production, people, the wider economy and rural economies. Thank you, Ceann Comhairle.